What is up, Scrub fam? I am back with a video. The fiance is out running some errands this morning, which rarely happens. Busy times, busy place. As you can see, you're in my office currently. Back behind me, you have my Pansy World Championship poster. Back to my over here corner, you can see there's this board. It's a matchup board, which it's secret, so you can't read it. Then over to my left, that is my workspace. That's where I do all my office work. And then over to the other side of me, you can see a bunch of DBS cards and stuff. So that's pretty exciting. But in general, I wanted to go ahead and start a new series of videos. I thought this was a great time to do because we're heading into the Nationals. And I'm calling this the Rose Gallery. And the reason why is because everyone's talking about the meta decks. I want to talk about some off-meta picks or off-meta decisions that you can make based on Nationals, the top cards that are seeing play right now, and then also the new time procedures, which I can assure you will make a difference heading in the Nationals. To get started, I wanted to go ahead and kind of set the stage for what the format is going to look like, not necessarily from a deck perspective, but from a card-by-card perspective. What are the most powerful, what are the best cards in the given format? And some of them, everyone's probably going to agree with. Some of them, people might need some explanation. But let me go ahead and just dive right in with the first two. SS3 Gogeta, Thwarting the Dark Empire. Card makes a lot of sense. It's present in probably one of the most popularized decks within the community. Everyone in the community talks a lot about Gogeta Zeno, and they think that Gogeta Zeno is a top pick heading in the Nationals. Thwarting is the card that kind of brings that whole entire deck together. If that card did not exist, the deck would not exist. The deck would not be very good at all if it didn't have Thwarting. And in general, this is going to be the aggressive card that decks that are playing black or splashing black are going to be leaning on in order to be able to produce a solid aggressive game plan in their early turns. Because this format, very much so with the new ban list, with the new set coming out, this format is definitely more of a mid-range format, not slightly a control format, because I think the mid-range decks are really good right now. So you have to try and find either in a really aggressive strategy that's great at getting the game over within the first 3 turns, or you need to find a deck that is better than all the mid-range decks turn 4, 5, 6, and beyond. And so Thwarting the Dark Empire is the card you're going to lean on to be able to get that aggressive strategy started in those first couple turns. The real card, though, in my opinion, that seems to be gaining the most momentum right now is Saiyan Scions. Me personally, it's been a center point in a lot of the builds I've been making that are aggressive decks. Being able to get this on the board, plus your leader swing, plus 2 vanilla swings, getting 4 swings in on the first turn of the game going second feels very good in this format. It can reduce the amount of time the opponent has to set up. It makes it so it puts a stressor on combo power in the early turn, because a lot of times people are either charging a tap land or they're not blue, so they're not going to have access to Sensu Bean. Or if you do your first swing and your opponent uses a bean, you just basically get a card out of their hand and you just pass the turn and keep your value. But overall, Saiyan Scions is kind of setting the stage for what early aggression needs to look like. A lot of swings early, a lot of pressure early, and then that way you can kind of snowball into a turn 2, turn 3 that puts the game in a really dominant position for you, which that's what aggro is doing at this point. Aggro is either trying to win the game by turn 3 or be dominating the game by turn 3 so that it can actually close the game out the turn after and stress the opponent's resources. And Saiyan Scions is a great pickup for being able to do that. So if I'm looking into an aggressive deck right now that are like meta choices, like power points in the format, these are kind of the first 2 cards I would start with. So if you're looking at building Gogeta Zeno, honestly, maybe take a look at playing Saiyan Scions instead of playing the other builds. I personally have been doing that, and it feels really powerful. Being able to get a Saiyan Scions either early on or late game and using the leader to pump up the vanillas is very relevant. Also, playing the vanillas and using the Gogeta 6 SR to be able to pop it, put your vanillas into play, pump them up to 20k. Again, very viable threats in that deck, and also I think it makes the deck much faster. You know, if you're on the play and you don't have a Thwarting but you have Scions, you can at least play the Scions, take it up, your opponent's not going to be able to kill it, goes back to you, and then now you have leader swing, Scion swing, skillless swing, skillless swing, you get your mill still, you can still play your Gogeta pieces, and so now you're off to a really hot start, and then again, you get to get into that stage where you're either winning the game on 3, or putting yourself in a dominating position where you're just leaning on the opponent and then forcing them to expend resources, which is where you want to be if you're aggro. So the next 2 cards on the list, probably the most obvious. Sensu Bean, card's incredibly powerful. When we start getting to formats like this, when you start getting to mid-range formats, cards like Sensu Bean shine even more because there's a very clear difference between decks that have access to it and decks that do not have access to it. Getting yourself an access to an additional energy every single turn, whether it be offensively or defensively, is such a huge and very swingy part of this format, and so that's why Sensu Bean picks up even more value. The next card, though, I honestly think that Power of a Super Saiyan is the best single card in the format in the game right now. Being able to cycle one, so basically discard it, draw a card, and tap a Unison battle card is such a powerful tempo swing. And being the fact that it replaces itself is just over the top. Again, as formats slow down, effects like this card, Power of a Super Saiyan, pick up more weight. They pick up more gravitas as we start moving into this format. Because if you're able to disrupt your opponent's attacking turn, if you're able to avoid having to spend resources to defend, if you're able to still enable a combo step and stop another attack, you're picking up huge value. It's also why Zamasu Super Combo picks up a ton of value in this format too, is again, as these games become mid-range matchups, you know, drawing cards isn't necessarily the most important thing because you have time to draw cards now since the game's going longer. So Power of Super Saiyan, Zamasu Super Combo pick up huge mileage. Power of Super Saiyan is just busted though because of the fact that it draws a card, has the upside of being an additional negate. And if you start to think about a world where you think Soul Striker is going to be one of the best decks, Soul Striker, if you're playing a yellow deck and you have both Power of Super Saiyan and Zamasu Super Combo, you put your opponent in a vice grip where if they swing Unison first, you tap their leader, they're not going to get their untap. So they're forced to swing leader first, which means you will always be able to Power of Super Saiyan, tap that Unison, make sure they lose their value for the turn, and then now you're not having to really defend as much. And if you're playing a deck like Icarus, like the likelihood you see all 4 Power of Super Saiyans is really high, and you can play 4 Power of Super Saiyans and 4 Sensu Beans in the same deck if you want, which, honestly, not a bad decision. Probably one of the best things that you can do. So, Power of Super Saiyan and Sensu Bean, again, probably the 2 best cards in the format, 2 best cards in the game right now. Lowkey. Next 2 cards on my list, doing 6 cards total. I think this new format, coming out of, and the only reason why Kefla is on this list is the fact that Kefla is such a powerful card. If you've played with this card, whether it be in, testing or just shadow playing or however you're doing it, Kefla is definitely going to be a center point of the format, and there's going to be a lot of decks that try and jam Kefla into it. I think Kefla is such a powerful card. It definitely shapes the way games are played when it's present. If you know your opponent has a Kefla and you don't have a way to actually answer Kefla right away, it's very, very difficult for you to commit to a swing. It also makes it so almost impossible for you to be able to go for lethal with a battle card because if you try to, your opponent's just going to Kefla it because it ignores barrier, bottom decks it, and then now you're in a world of hurt because your opponent has this big 30k threat that's also a blocker, so it's even more defense. So Kefla is such a powerful card heading into this next format, such a powerful card heading into Nationals, and honestly, it's the reason why the card above it, Power of Super Saiyan, picks up even more legs, is the fact that if Kefla, right, is one of the center points of your format, well, being able to disrupt Kefla with Power of Super Saiyan when your opponent plays it offensively is such a powerful thing. So your opponent, they want to go all in on their Kefla. They combo, they rival Kefla into play, and you're like, okay, cool, Power Super Saiyan, I'll tap your Kefla. And then you can either take the damage, do whatever you want. But you're set up, you're in a good spot. So I think that Kefla, if that's one of the power points of the format, which I think it will be, I think a lot of people going into Nationals are going to do whatever they can to jam this card into their decks, into their 65. And I don't fault them. And it's another reason why aggro decks really have to be looking within that first 3 turns. Because if you don't, then a card like Kefla that card's online. And if you're on the play and it's turn 3 and you haven't won the game yet and your opponent gets the 3 energy, well, now you have to worry about Kefla for the rest of the game. And that becomes very, very difficult. So Kefla is definitely kind of that card that defines the turns of format we're in. Once you get to 3 energy and beyond, Kefla is always a looming threat. It's such a powerful card. And in my opinion, that's kind of one of the reasons why this is a key card in the format. This is one of the cards that's a build around. So again, very powerful. Suprekai, Hive, Space Time, and Raveler. In the last format, in my opinion, this actually was the best card. And the reason why it was the best card is the fact that it was being played in a deck that sees all the cards. So the likelihood of playing a Kai SER every single game is really high. Being able to clear Unisons, clear boards, get a threat on board, very powerful. Next set, with the next set releasing though, there's going to be some decks that leverage a different SCR, which the Pan Zeno SCR is a fantastic SCR, fantastic addition. It's going to replace Supreme Kai Time, Space Time Unraveler in a lot of spots. The only thing is Space Time Unraveler being able to disrupt unisons is such a great tool to have. So it's really going to come down to how present you think unisons are going to be, and if you need the unison removal. If you need the unison removal, then I highly recommend going Space Time Unraveler. If you want the ability to stop battle card attacks, and you want to be able to have that cheap threat that can steal something, well, Pan Zeno is a great call. So I think a lot of players are going to be torn between Kai Unraveler and Pan. So again, these are kind of the 6 cards that I think that this is where the format kind of starts from. And if we're looking at leaders in which this format kind of starts from, I think everyone kind of knows what they're looking at, right? Everyone knows that you're going to have Soul Striker. Like, obviously Soul Striker Reborn is going to be one of the top leaders in the format. Cell Surge obviously is going to be the next one. There's so many cards with Cell in it. Cell Surge, another popular pick. Gogeta Zeno, probably community narrative alone. Gogeta Zeno and Cell Surge Hand Destruction are probably the decks that people are talking about the most showing up at Nationals. I don't want to comment on whether or not that's correct. Personal stance, I think both those decks probably have the worst matchup spread against the field. I know that's controversial. I know people are going to disagree with me, but I think Gogeta Zeno and Cell Surge, if you look at the spread of meta decks, have the worst spread. Gogeta Zeno especially, Cell Surge second. And then, of course, the fourth deck that kind of makes up that top selection is going to be Higher Dragon. So, Cell Surge, Gogeta Zeno, that is the community narrative, right? Which always becomes a factor for these major events. Cell Surge, Gogeta Zeno, everyone is talking about it, which means they will be present. Cards are available. You know, people already have their copies of Thwarting because they bought them a long time ago. Card availability is not too crazy. They're not playing too many new cards. So those two decks in general, you're going to see them in numbers at Nationals. Soul Striker, right? Soul Striker and Icarus are each on 2 different ends of the spectrum. Soul Striker gets the most access to most energy every single turn, whereas Higher Dragon gets the access to most cards every single turn. So Higher Dragon stays consistently around 14 cards throughout the game, and Soul Striker, once you get to turn 3 you have 5 energy, turn 4, 6 energy, turn 5, 7 energy. So those are kind of the decks that operate at the 2 different ends of the spectrum, and we're in a mid-range format, like I said. So you kind of have to pick between if you want more cards or if you want more energy. And they both have different bad matchups, right? Soul Striker historically is shown to be weak to hand destruction when not prepared. And Icarus, without access to Violent Rush Bojack, is more susceptible to decks that do play a longer game and play bigger threats, as well as the fact that it is kind of weak to God Sealing because all of its threats cost 2 or more these days. All their powerful threats cost 2 or more. So again, looking at your 4 top decks, right? And these are based on different things. Community Narrative, Gogeta Zeno, and Cell Surge. Then, mid-range format, All-Stars. Having more cards with Higher Dragon. Having more energy with Soul Striker. So that's where we're going to start with our Rogues Gallery. Next video will be me going over probably my favorite aggressive deck heading into this new format. I think capturing the winning in the first 2 to 3 turns, this deck does incredibly well. And its drawback is it has to find ways to win games going second, which I think that's any aggro deck's problem right now. So, hope you guys enjoyed this intro video, getting you set, getting the format and the stage set for you to begin your Nationals testing, and then I'll see you in the next video with my first Rogue pick. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hashtag ScrubFam is best fam. Shout out to Team FOE, best team on the planet, hands down. Hands down. No arguments. Shout out to the George Machado, the Pro Play Games. But anyway, hashtag ScrubFam is best fam. Okay, thanks. Bye!